them? Who's warming up the house for them? Who's getting everything ready for them? And so this is what led me to think about the children as we go into economic action step number 5. So I'm going to read some of this to you, and then I'm going to go into that next step. And he says here that in Powernomics, page 139, 50 years ago, nearly 98% of all employed Blacks worked in white homes, businesses, and communities. The story of Black domestic workers illustrates how Blacks have always used their intellectual resources for others. There is a parallel in business. Domestics arrived before sunup to start fires and warm the homes of white families so they'd wake up and dress in comfort. Blacks then cooked breakfast, sent the kids off to school, washed, scrubbed, ironed, sewed, and cooked dinner for the white families. After feeding the family, cleaning up the kitchen, and putting the children to bed, these Black mothers would then return to their homes after dark. Did anyone ever wonder in all those years who was taking care of the Black children? I would like to know who is taking care of the Black community and Black businesses today when nearly 98% of all employed Blacks continue to work outside their communities in white businesses or offices. So basically, if you ever want to understand why Black people don't have any institutions or any businesses, ask yourself, who's pouring into Black-owned businesses? Who's pouring into Black institutions? We even your Black celebrities don't really pour into Black-owned institutions that often. They will give extra. It's like I remember Will Smith was talking about why he got his first divorce. And this is 20 years ago. I heard this advice. I thought it was great advice. What he said was that the reason I got a divorce was because I was really ambitious about my career. I was Mr. Work, 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 go, 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 nonstop, nonstop. And he said, I figured that that I would give my family whatever time I had left over after I finished working. But what he realized was that he said, I worked so much and I was so busy that there wasn't any time left over for me to spend with my family. So my family got nothing. My family time basically starved to death because I was so busy doing other things for other people or to pursue other priorities. So what he said, which is really important, is that if you want to have a strong family, your family has to be part of the infrastructure of all the things that matter to you in life. So you don't do family stuff last after everything else is done. You do family stuff first before other things are done. This is in a book called Traction. This is what they call building, what they call quarterly rocks. And what they say in this book is that this is what my team actually does, is they said that, so imagine a glass that is filled with rocks and sand. And imagine the sand is all the little problems that you have, all the little things that they just kind of distract you. And the rocks are your big goals for 2023, 2024, 2025, and beyond. So so imagine if you fill the glass halfway full with sand, and then you start putting rocks into the sand. Well, you're not going to be able to get very many rocks into the glass because you put so much sand in that glass. A better approach is to put the rocks in first, and then pour the sand in and let the sand fit in between the rocks. So I live my life like that. Every quarter of my life, I have my rocks. I have my 4 or 5 things that are going to happen no matter what, that are going to get my time and attention no matter what, right? The quarterly rocks might be talking to you guys. I talk to you guys almost every single day, no matter whatever else I have going on. Spending time with my family is another quarterly rock. I have to do it. Very important to sustaining the institution in my house. It's non-negotiable, Levon. Good, great term. What else? Health, exercise. I always make time to go to the gym because that's really important to spend time with my wife and to take care of my health, because health is wealth. Calling my mama and my kids, right? Little things like that. And then, if I got extra time left over, I'll do some of the other stuff, but I don't do the other stuff before I do the main stuff. Right. So in your life, I think we all have to ask ourselves, what's the other thing and what's the main thing? How do we keep the main thing the main thing? Right. How do we make the main thing the first thing? That B1 means blackness, being black, and you sustaining that which matters to you, that you're the main thing, that your community is the main thing, that as Mr. Jan Jasmine says, that your community is the main thing, your families are the main thing, blackness is the main thing. So it doesn't mean that we won't do things with white people or even go work with them or for them, whatever the case may be. But we're going to do that after we finish doing all the work necessary to take care of ourselves. A lot of celebrities, unfortunately, and a lot of us really as a community have been trained to do the opposite. We're trained to give the black community whatever is left, the leftovers, the sloppy seconds. We'll go and we'll spend 40 hours a week, like no matter what, with a white business. That's a lot of time. That you spend more time at that job than you spend with your kids. So 40 hours a week building a white-owned business. Right. And then we will say, oh, I want to do something with the black community. So then maybe what we'll do is maybe on Saturdays, we might volunteer a couple hours at the boys club, or maybe on Sundays, we might go to a black church or something like that. But in general, the bulk of our time and energy is put into this other thing that we do during the week. And so the main thing is not the black community. The main thing is that job or whatever it is. Right. And a lot of celebrities will do that when they do. I look at what they do with their money. So you'll see some celebrities that, let's say that they make, they invest or give out 50 million, not 50 million, let's say $5 million in a year. Well, you'll find out that they invested maybe 4.5 million into white-owned businesses. And then they'll say, oh, I gave $200,000 to an HBCU. Right. So they'll give black people kind of a couple scraps, but their main investment, the thing that they're putting their energy into, their economic energy, is something that is not black. And so you kind of have to stop that because basically that comes from your training, that's your indoctrination. 98% of all black people do that. That's why white businesses are so strong. Well, white businesses are strong because we support them so well. We are the number one consumers of these businesses in terms of percentage of income. We are also the best, most loyal, hardest working employees. So we're dumping everything we have into other people's stuff. So of course, white businesses are going to be successful because we know white people are doing that. They're not doing anything with black-owned businesses. And then you look over and you see that little starving black HBCU that can't even pay somebody to pick up the trash, or you see that little struggling black business that can't even raise $5,000. Well, it's because everybody's busy. Everybody's got other stuff to do, and that's not high on the priority list. So let me read. So this is page 139, economic action step number 5. Establish solid root businesses within black communities. He says root businesses are those that are established based on competitive advantages within black communities. Besides offering consumer products and services, root businesses are critical because they stabilize the community by offering jobs and employment training and revenues for supported businesses and charitable organizations. Their identification with and location in the community would give them a competitive advantage as black behavior becomes more self-directed. Many root businesses already exist within black communities, but few are black owned. Many root businesses already exist in black communities. Root businesses, root businesses are businesses based on competitive advantages within black communities. Pay attention now, pay attention. A root business is a business that is established in a black community because of the competitive advantage that you have. So there are people who spot the things that you're good at. They spot the competitive advantages that you have. But then they go in and they're not owned by black people, right? So in Powernomics, which you can get a copy of powernomics.com, Dr. Anderson is saying that there are people who see that value that's in black neighborhoods. It's just not you. Or maybe because you grew up sort of identifying yourself as an employee, you're not thinking as a business owner. Right? And this is why mindset and mindset and culture is so very important. Right? It's like if I go play, if I am built to be the best basketball player in the world, LeBron James used to be a football player. So if I was LeBron James and I was never introduced to the game of basketball and all I ever did was play football, then I'm not going to have a chance to truly fulfill my destiny because I'm thinking I'm supposed to go to the NFL. If LeBron James had not played basketball and had instead just stuck with football and football only and never been introduced to basketball, then LeBron James would be like probably a lot of other NFL players. Maybe he would play 3 or 4 years and then he would have retired after that. So, but instead, because he was introduced to another way to pursue his athletic talent, he was able to do extremely well as a basketball player. So some of you were raised to be football players when really you could have been a great basketball player. I think about that. My biological father was really good at baseball. I heard. And if I wish he had taught me how to play baseball, because I was into track and field. That was my thing. I was the captain of the track team. I'm a big fan of track and field, but that wasn't my greatest natural talent. And basketball wasn't my, I'm 5'8", so that doesn't work out. Football, yeah, it's okay. But I'm not a big guy, but I was pretty kind of fast and kind of strong. So maybe I'd have been okay in football. But what about golf? I think I would have been a great golfer. Like, think about it. Imagine if I had somebody mentor me at the age of 12 or even 9 or 10 or 7 or 6 and taught me how to really go out there and do what Tiger Woods did. I think I could have been a professional golfer. I'm a pretty smart guy, I guess. Maybe. I say that humbly, right? Tennis. Tennis. I look at the way tennis is played and running and jumping. I was pretty good at that. Maybe tennis would have been a good sport for me. Baseball, right? But I never got exposed to those sports. I didn't know how to play those sports. I did not see myself as a golfer, right? So a lot of your kids don't fill the void, or a lot of not your kids, our kids don't fill that economic void, and really pursue those opportunities, massive opportunities in the community, because they don't identify themselves as business owners. They're waiting for a business owner to create a business so they can go apply for a job at that business. Or they see that the community doesn't have a grocery store, and there are people who say, oh, we need to go we need to go create a grocery store. But then there are other people who say, I need somebody to go build a grocery store so I can shop at that grocery store and I can work at that grocery store, right? So you have to have the kids that have the mindset that says, no, if there's not a grocery store there, I need to go be a part of the group that helps to create that grocery store. You understand? That's mindset. That's culture. Jewish people think that way. That's why Jewish people have so much wealth and power. So moving on. Let's see here. Their identification with a location in the community would give them a competitive advantage as Black behavior becomes more self-directed. Many root businesses already exist within Black communities, but few are Black-owned. They are usually owned by whites or Asians, and when sold, they are sold to non-Blacks. To develop Black-owned root businesses, Black communities should establish a system to buy out existing white and non-Black-owned businesses. Encouraging businesses to sink their roots deep in their own community is a very common practice in America. Whether it is Sears and Roebuck, Burger King, Kentucky Fried Chicken, or Jiffy Lube, business developers routinely construct and operate their first stores within their own communities. The same is true for ethnic immigrants. Asians and Hispanics open and operate businesses in their own enclaves first, before venturing into another group's community. After establishing root businesses, ethnic businesses remain ethnic businesses. Asian restaurants and cleaners remain Asian. The Jewish deli remains Jewish. Arab carpet businesses remain identifiably Arab. Where are the root businesses that Blacks established that they passed on from one generation to the next? On the other hand, Asians have even learned how to use government contracts to develop root businesses. Asians are automatically eligible for the Small Business Administration set-aside program because of their race. According to the Wall Street Journal, in New York City, Asians' share of SBA Small Business Administration contracts has soared from 3% to 64.1% within 10 years. From 3% to 64.1%. That's over 20x. I'll take a sip of coffee on that so we can process the magnitude of those numbers. That's intentionality. That's them being intentional about getting what they feel belongs to them, not mad at them for it. While Blacks get less than 18%, though over 90% of the Asians have been in this country less than 30 years and have the highest median family income in America, they don't vote very much, by the way. They have a very low voter participation rate. I'm not trying to be mean to anybody who really deeply believes in voting. I respect that completely, but they don't really vote that much. They vote for themselves. They vote for them dollar bills in the bank account. That's what they don't show up at the polls. They show up at the bank. They have the highest median family income in America. They've been here less than 30 years. They have devised methods to pass on their certification status to succeeding generations of Asian businesses. While they are accomplishing these feats, Black Americans, who the SBA was initially designed to help, now get the smallest number of awards of any of the so-called minorities, and they are forced to officially graduate out of the program by the end of 7 years. Since integration in the 1960s, most Black entrepreneurs seek to economically pass by opening their businesses either deep in or on the fringes of white communities to hide their Blackness. Key personnel in these passing Black businesses, managers, receptionists, and sales representatives, are often non-Black. According to a researcher at the Minority Business Development Agency of the U.S. Department of Commerce, approximately 90% of the successful Black businesses within the Washington, D.C. metro area were located on the fringes of the Black city or in the surrounding white suburbs as of 1996. Let me tell you all a funny story. So there was a Black-owned hotel in Washington, D.C., very nice hotel. I don't remember the exact franchise or brand it was. We reached out to that hotel and we said, we have this convention and we want to have a convention at your hotel. It's going to be over a year from now. We'd like to know if you have space. They said, sure, we got plenty of space. Tell us about your convention. Well, our event planner said it's called the All Black National Convention. Right after that happened, suddenly they had no space. This is a Black-owned hotel. I kid you not. This was a Black-owned hotel, and suddenly they didn't have any space. We said, okay, so when will you have space? They literally said, like, we're booked up for the next 2 years. So they went from being completely open, this is a Black-owned hotel. And because we were called the All Black National Convention, suddenly the conversation went from, yes, we would love to have you, to, whoa, we don't want to be associated with that. I couldn't believe it. It was right in D.C., Chocolate City and all that stuff. Yeah, and so in many cases, for a long period of time, and I don't hold the ill will. I don't care. I'm not gonna give my money to somebody who don't want it. But it's a reminder that some of us are still a little bit afraid of Blackness. They're a little bit afraid of even if someone says, I really love being Black and I love Black people. That's seen as a little bit too radical, or they feel like that's going to undermine their business prospects. And some of them are just scared, because I would imagine that some white consumers aren't interested in supporting a Black-owned business if that business is a little too openly Black, right? Or if that owner is a little too openly Black or a little too associated with the rest of us. So, but that did really happen, and that was very shocking. I hit up a couple of friends of mine. One friend I have who's actually a billionaire in the hotel industry, and I said, this is unacceptable. This is crazy. I can't believe they did this. I'm not going to give them my money, but I just think you need to know that this is what happened. So let me keep reading. Black businesses that economically pass are in a double jeopardy. Not only must they hide their true identity, but they must also depend on white America for their resources and market opportunities. Because their roots are not with their own people in the Black community, they are vulnerable to white boycotts. Throughout history, Black businesses have often failed because they were boycotted by whites who resented Black success. Like, again, maybe this hotel, maybe that was their fear. If we get seen as a Black hotel having an all Black convention, then we're gonna lose our white customers. We're gonna alienate our white customers. And this isn't just for businesses. This is really true for anybody who, let's say a celebrity, who is doing really well in mainstream, making lots of movies or whatever. They can only be so Black. There's only a certain amount of Blackness or Black ideas that are digestible, and so to some extent they're living in this double speak sort of world. People talk about code switching and all that. This isn't just for businesses. I think there are a lot of, because remember, you are kind of like a business. You generate revenue, you have expenses, you have a value, a wealth. I could quantify your net worth in terms of your human capital. So you're a walking business if you work for somebody. So a lot of Black people that work in that space are in a very vulnerable position where they're afraid of being canceled if they get seen as being too Black. Let me give you an example that is 100% real in real life. Anybody remember Twitch, the DJ Twitch that worked at the Ellen DeGeneres show, who took his own life? You know what I'm talking about? Well, Twitch, it was interesting. My wife is an expert on that topic, actually, people taking their own lives. That was what she did, a fellowship in Guyana when she did a Fulbright. And I don't know if y'all remember, when I was living in Guyana in 2017, we went to Guyana because they have a problem with that issue. Ever since Jim Jones went to Guyana and did the whole Kool-Aid thing and everybody drank the Kool-Aid. Well, Twitch, I saw a video that Twitch did. And I remember, here's the thing. I saw Twitch and he was really doing well to a point, right? He's on the Ellen show. He's living in a nice house. He's got a white wife, and he's just this fun-loving guy who's dancing a lot, and everybody likes the way he dances. And my wife actually has theories on that, where a lot of people that are really sort of maintaining the smile for everybody all the time and sort of forced into that space, they have mental health issues. You know, my wife is a therapist, right? So she can spot these things. You know, there's a horror movie called Smile that on a deeper level is really making that point, that there are people who are smiling every day, but they're falling apart on the inside. They're dying on the inside. And that's what the movie Smile is about, except it looked like, on the surface, it looked like just a regular horror movie, because people would like kill themselves. Like they'd be smiling and they stab themselves in the head or whatever. And that was crazy. And then if you saw somebody do it, and you were inherit their trauma. Next thing you know, 5 days later, you do the same thing. So it really was showing, it wasn't just a horror movie. It was speaking to the idea that trauma is contagious, and that if you don't address the deeper issues that are going on with you in an honest and authentic way, or and get in a space that is truly loving and supportive of who you're trying to be, then it's going to cause some serious problems. So with Twitch, I saw a video with Twitch where Twitch was really frustrated with his audience. And I've seen this before. I felt like he was trapped by his audience, because I could tell he deep down he's a regular black man. Deep down, I felt like he's a brother like us. But there's only certain things you can do if you're operating in that Ellen DeGeneres space, white liberals, LGBT type stuff. You know, you got to kind of go along with some stuff that might seem a little bit weird, but you're getting the bag of money, so it all seems okay. So he did a video where he was on. He had gotten a little bit radicalized when, you know, right before the pandemic, when there were the police killings, right? And he was really upset with his fans, because he said, every time I talk about a black man being killed by the police, y'all tell me like, oh, you're overreacting, or oh, you need to be quiet, or oh, don't talk about that. And he was really frustrated by that, right? Because basically his audience, from what I gathered, again, I'm not an expert on this, but what I gathered was they were basically like, you know, just shut up and dance. Like, just dance for us and make us laugh. Like, that's why we're here. We're not here to hear about your issues. We're not here to hear about your people. We're not here to hear about black men dying like that. We want to laugh and have fun. And if you pay attention, a lot of the black people that do really well in those spaces are the black people who make everybody smile, like the comedians. There is a black guy, I kid you not, from an African country. Y'all probably know if you saw him. He has the largest TikTok following on earth. Y'all seen, anybody know what I'm talking about? And this guy, I don't know his name though. He's from Africa, but he has the largest TikTok following like anywhere. And I watched some of his videos, and I could only watch about 2 or 3 of them. And I told my wife, I said, I get it why all these people love him. He's a damn clown. He's a clown. That's it. Every facial expression is like, and I literally saw him wearing a clown hat. He literally had a clown hat. So, you know, you're showing up as the clown, and you're fulfilling all these stereotypes, then you're going to get that following. You know, all these people are going to love you. And I'm not hating on him. I mean, good for him. Good luck to him. We need comedians and all that. So there's nothing wrong with that. But the problem is that there might be a point where he might wake up and say, I don't feel like being the clown today. You know, and if you can't get that out, like if you can't show, like I can show up and talk to y'all and say, I'm really mad today. I'm pissed off right now. Like I you know, and I can show up as a scholar. I can show up as an angry black man. You all will get all of that. It'll be fine. It's not a big deal. Sometimes I'll show up with a joke and we'll laugh together. But then sometimes we'll cry together. Sometimes we'll get pissed off together. Sometimes we'll be thinking together. But if I am typecast, if I'm in a space where they only know me as the funny guy, then that's all I can be, is the funny guy. And if you step out of position, if you're not in that role anymore, then people are like, well, wait, what is this? What did this? No, I don't like any of this. So a lot of times, black businesses that are passing for white, they're not the only ones who are kind of trapped by their base. A lot of us get trapped, you know, whether we're talking about what we're doing on the job, or we're talking about how if you build your brand as a black comedian, but yet deep down you got all these serious issues you want to address and your audience doesn't want to hear it. You're unfortunately, you're effectively powerless, right? You think that you have the power to address things on a large scale because you got a 10 million people that follow you, but who are those 10 million people? If all those people, it's almost like when I was explaining to somebody how the women on the internet who are showing their booties, it looks like they're winning, but they're really not. It looks like they're winning because she takes another picture, sticks a butt out, and she gets 10,000 likes on that picture. You're making the assumption that people are hitting the like button for a reason other than the fact that they just like your butt. right? They just like that one thing about you. So that same lady might show up and say, I want to talk about women's rights today. They'll be like, oh, we don't want to hear all that, or I'm looking for a husband now. And a lot of guys be like, I'm not going to marry you. You're the lady who sticks her butt out on the internet. Like, that's not, my wife I don't want to marry a woman like that. Right. And so really, it's kind of the same thing. If you become wealthy and famous, you got to be careful. Like, people aim for wealth and fame and all that, but they don't think about how they get there and what the trade-off is. Sometimes your audience can enslave you. Sometimes the money can enslave you. And if you don't understand that and are okay with those trade-offs, then what will happen is the mental health issues might pop in. And I wonder if that was what might have been going on with Twitch. If you feel trapped, like, dang, if I really show people who I truly am, if I come out of the closet as this, intelligent, angry black man, then I'm going to lose my job at the Ellen Show. I'm going to lose all my followers. No one's going to support me. That's a very tough burden to carry. But then again, I'm only speculating at that point. I can't tell you why he did what he did. I just found it really strange that he was doing a TikTok dance the day before he killed himself. I'm like, what was happening here? What was going on here? It doesn't add up to me. All right. So anyway, let me keep going. All right. So and by the way, as we're talking, I want to remind everybody, if you want to get financial flashcards for your kids, feel free to go to my website, boycewatkins.com. We have flashcards for 4 areas. If you'd like to take a look at those, we have money. We have flashcards on investing. We have flashcards on real estate, and we have flashcards on credit scores, lines of credit, things like that. So you can feel free to take a look at that. If that'll help your kids. And also, some of you have businesses and you'd like to advertise on maybe my YouTube channel or something like that. If you go to drboycefinance.com, you can take a look at that and decide if that's something you'd like to do. So feel free to do that. drboycefinance.com. That's the website. All right. So let's see. Dr. Emerson says here on page 141 in Powernomics, he says, think for a moment and tell me what is wrong with this picture. When you go into hotels, stores, restaurants, or any businesses in Asian, Hispanic, Arab, and even white communities, you can count on the management and the working staff to be Asian, Hispanic, Arab, or white. The same community, the same as the community itself. But in Asian, Hispanic, or white-owned businesses in a black neighborhood, the staff will still be Arab, Asian, Hispanic, or white. Establishing root businesses means that the management and the staff in the business located in black communities should be predominantly black, regardless of who owns the business. If that is not the case, blacks must insist on a change if they expect to have an alternative economy that they control. And that reminds me, when I was going through West Atlanta with my wife, and I saw that we ran through an area that was pretty torn down, pretty bad. The only buildings I saw that were not torn down and messed up was the church. I saw a big, beautiful church. And I also saw a corner store run by an Arab guy. And I also saw an apartment complex being built. And I looked at the people who were wearing the construction hats. Every single person that I saw was white or Hispanic. I did not see any black people making money in this poor black neighborhood building this construction project. Across the street from all the white and Hispanic construction workers making money building the apartment complex, I saw a group of black men sitting in front of an abandoned grocery store, just sitting there doing nothing. And then also down the street, when I saw the corner store run by the Arab guy, they had the bars on the windows. We stopped to get some Gatorade. I don't know. We could have been, for all I know, we could have been in danger running through this neighborhood. Because a couple people recognized me. And one guy said, well, Dr. Boyce, you running through West Atlanta? And I was like, well, I shouldn't be doing that. Where am I in trouble now? Am I in danger? And I don't know it. I didn't care. I said, well, I'm in shape now. If something goes down, at least I can run away. And we did that run. But I remember thinking about that in terms of the fact that if you don't stand up for what you have a right to have and what you have a right to own, and learn how to do that kind of in a very clear, authoritarian, non-apologetic way, then people will walk over you. People will exploit you. You got to understand that to some extent, you've been trained to be complicit in your exploitation. We can sit here all day and talk about what white folks are doing wrong and everything else. And I'm not going to disagree with you, but they're looking out for themselves. Asians look out for themselves. And the question is, are you looking out for yourself? Are you looking out for each other? Or are you cheering on each other when you choose to sell out or choose to abandon your institutions? Are we cheering when black women go and marry white men from England, and black men go marry Asian women? I'm not saying that that's bad. I have people in my own family who married white. I you know, and I don't have anything against their personal choice. I don't judge that. I can't control any of that. But I know that in my own personal space, when I made a decision of where I wanted to marry, I was like, nah, I think I need to marry a black woman. I think that's where I need to be. I need to deal with all the challenges that might come with marrying a traumatized African-American woman who grew up in the hood and has some, both of us have issues as a result of that, because I'm here for the fight. Right. And the fight is not for everybody. It's a matter of being intentional about where you place your resources. And your resources aren't just your money, right? Your money's part of it, right? Buying black is very important, but investing black is also important. And now, if you do decide to own assets in other communities, I think that's okay too. For example, we talk about owning stock in white-owned companies and things like that. The same way they own part of your community, you can own part of theirs. So I talk to you guys all day about taking advantage of this extraordinary stock market and how you're able to make money from that market and position yourself to be an owner and to benefit from the massive wealth that's in America. So I don't think that being pro-black means you have to disconnect from all the wealth and power and prosperity that exists in America. Understand, the goal is not to turn black people into North Korea or some sort of economic island where we're not connected or doing business with anybody else. That's not the issue. The issue is that when you engage in trade with other communities, you've got to make sure that you're benefiting from some of that trade. You got to make sure that in this economic seesaw, that sometimes you're up, sometimes you're down, that you give a little and you get a little back. You can't have an imbalanced sort of trade. So for example, the producer and the consumer engage in trade. You can't always be the consumer. You can't always be the one who's buying somebody else's products. Sometimes they got to buy from you. And if they don't want to buy from you, then you don't buy from them. Right. But if they're willing to buy from you and then you buy from them and then it goes back and forth, then that's a good symbiotic kind of reciprocal process where everybody's winning, everybody's benefiting. So don't think. So I want to make it real clear, because sometimes people get confused when they hear me talk. They think that I am saying that if you have a white friend, you're a sellout, or if you do business with a white person, well, you're crazy, or even if you marry a white person. I'm not going to judge you for that. I just want you to figure out, where am I investing in the black community? Where am I helping to develop something? Whether it's some sort of institution, particularly, where am I developing a black family, a black-owned family? Where am I developing a black-owned business? Where am I helping to develop some black-owned real estate? Where am I helping to do something or investing in black children so that those children will be more empowered to take on the world, so that they reach their potential? That's what you kind of want to look at. And this is, so for example, I'm blessed with the opportunity to invest in the black community by talking to you guys every single day and doing the things that I do as a scholar, right? And that was an intentional choice, because remember, I was at Syracuse University. I could have left Syracuse to go to another white institution. My time at Syracuse was pretty much up. That was kind of done. But there was 1,000 white universities I could have taught at, and you never would have heard of me. We would never connect. But instead, I pivoted in a direction that said, okay, how do I fulfill my purpose and really do what I love, but do it in a way that hits the target a little bit better? So figure out how you can hit the target, and whatever that means to you, it's a personal choice, but you got to be intentional about it, because the system's not designed to naturally allow you to hit the target. You have to sort of go seek that out. All right. So economic action step number 6 is to construct vertical businesses and industries that control all processes, from raw resources and markets within and outside of black communities. It is physically impossible for blacks to compete in every kind of business in every community. We will have our greatest impact if we exercise vertical involvement primarily within those businesses in which we have some competitive advantages. Vertically integrated businesses translate into industries. We should seek out key industries and strive to create a monopoly. A monopoly through vertical integration locks out competition. Vertical businesses can control markets, resources, research, and other complementary activities. The competitive advantage remains whether the businesses are local or national. Black businesses must also be vertically organized in production and horizontal in marketing. Once a black business or industry has succeeded in building a vertical industry in one black community, it should then spread horizontally across the country into other black communities until it has control of all of its home markets. This vertical movement, followed by horizontal penetration, allows blacks to establish closed-loop production and marketing networks for the private use of black businesses. This happens in the mainstream business world every day. For instance, more than 40% of all the U.S. exports and nearly 50% of its imports do not compete in the open market. Instead, they move through closed channels. Japan does the same thing. So if closed loop production and market channels are good enough for the big boys, why shouldn't we have our channels too? The challenge to Black people is to build and control their own community markets and the products that pass through them. This means Blacks need a variety of business communities, such as manufacturers, suppliers, distributors, technology, marketing, and retailers. These business communities can link and serve as conduits for moving products, capital, and supportive services. For example, if Blacks built a leather factory in an enterprise and empowerment zone in Baltimore, Maryland, the factory and its supported businesses could be vertically integrated to serve as a national empowerment model and cluster. Distribution centers for the factory products could be established across the country. Retail outlets could be set up in malls, airports, and downtown stores. Our hypothetical leather factory can engender at least 3 levels of businesses that individually or collectively get together with other Black manufacturers, distributors, and retailers to improve their business operations. This national network of business communities can increase the competitiveness of Blacks in business. So that's a lot. That's a lot, right? Dr. Anderson in Powernomics writes about sort of big picture industry level, sort of takeovers that might seem intimidating when you first look at them, right? Maybe you're sitting there thinking, gosh, how am I going to take over the leather industry or whatever? I'm going to try to keep it simple, okay? In the book I just wrote, The 10 Commandments of Black Economic Power, in that book, I talk about how to build an economy, right? And it's very, very simple. There are 3 C's that build an economy. It's 3 markets. Markets are basically where you have a buyer and a seller, or you have people trading. You need a market for capital, so you can raise the capital to make your investment. You need a market for contractors, which is people that are going to do the labor once the investment has been acquired. And then a market for customers, which is where you're going to sell and export whatever you create through your process, right? So, for example, I want to sell sneakers. I need to raise, let's say, $10,000 to sell sneakers. So we form a capital market. I go to you guys and I say, hey, let's raise 10 grand so we can open up the sneaker business and get started. And then once we have the business, let's say we buy a building and some land and some raw materials. Well, then you need the contractors. You need the people that can actually take what you own, that capital now, and turn that into something that's sellable, that's a commodity or whatever, right? So we need people that are going to come in and help put the sneakers together or work with the customers and whatever it is, right? To do the work, to run the sneaker store or the factory or whatever it is, right? That labor is what matters. So like when white folks had all this land, that was their capital. And then their contractors were you, except you were unpaid contractors. So you were working the land. If you had not worked the land would not be ready for them to get any benefit from it. They got wealth from the land because they had your labor. So they had the capital, you became the contractors, but you were unpaid contractors. And then the customers, well, when they got the land, the capital, and then they got the contractors to do the work, the laborers, which was you, they would then make something like cotton. And then they have to go find customers for the cotton. Well, they had customers around the world that would buy the cotton. And then boom, they had an economy. Boom, they had a system, they had a process, right? So ultimately, I think that models that are simple in terms of you sort of looking at what's around you might be a good way to get started on this track, as opposed to thinking on the broader scale of mass scale industrialization. I think that's going to happen, but there's a lot of steps that have to occur before we can really get to that point. Our kids may have access to the capital necessary to do things on a broad scale. That's why I think our kids should be trained in Powernomics to really understand what vertical integration looks like, what it means to access a raw material and nurture it and prepare it for a broader market. And also, you got to protect it. Whenever you have something of value, you must protect it. And we don't do a very good job of protecting our most valuable resources. We didn't protect hip hop. White folks came in and stole it. We don't protect our athletes. Or the talent that our athletes have, people come in and they steal it. Any country that has a resource that cannot be protected, whether it's oil or music or nickel in the ground, they're going to lose it. Somebody's going to come along and either steal it from you, beat you up and take it, or they're going to make a lopsided deal with you that's going to benefit them and to steal from you. And this is where business knowledge comes into play. The tech companies stole a big chunk of the music industry. The record labels, the Warner Brothers and all that. They had Sony. They had control of all these music rights, and Apple and all these tech companies came along and they're like, oh well, we just want to license some of your songs and put them on our little stupid little app. And they're like, well, what is an app? And what is this? What is this iPhone? And it was even before the iPhone, whatever that it wasn't called an iPad. It was you know what I'm talking about. Whatever they had before the iPhone, where you just listen to the music and you could have a bunch of songs on an iPod. Thank you. They didn't know what an iPod was, right? Well, a lot of us remember those days before we even knew what an iPod was. So they didn't see it as a threat. They were like, sure, okay, yeah, you can license it. It won't cost you that much. And then these tech guys took this music and they got these long, lopsided contracts, and they took this music and made a fortune off of that. They killed it. They made a ton of money off of that. So then the record label was like, whoa, wait a minute, you jacked us of our wealth. Like, you messed us over. And they were able to get a little bit of wealth extraction from the process at that point on. But it was the understanding that the tech guys had of the power of their technology to change the world that allowed them to make lopsided deals with the record labels. And this happens all the time. There's a whole lot of situations where you'll sell something cheap without realizing exactly what you're giving up. And so ultimately, economic knowledge is very important for kids, because if our kids grow up understanding the value of things, and the having economic vision, the ability to see what something can become, they're not going to go and sell, something really powerful and wealthy, or something that could be very lucrative for a bargain basement price. If you don't see your worth, then ultimately people are going to extract your worth from you. They're going to steal from you. So just keep that in mind. So let's keep going. Let's economic action step number 7, Powernomics, page 142. Stop the capital drain out of Black communities. In other words, buy Black but sell to anyone. So take their money, but don't give them all of yours. Black America has a major problem: the flight of its disposable income into the pockets of racial, ethnic, and religious groups around the world. Black people have enriched every group except themselves. Without a sense of community and a vertical chain of obligation, and no guidelines on how they should spend their money, no product or business loyalty in the marketplace, Black consumers are easily persuaded to be penny wise and dollar foolish in their spending patterns. They shop for the best price when, for a few pennies more, they can maximize the benefits of their expenditures to include the Black community and the race. The few who are concerned about getting the best return on money spent or invested use too narrow a definition for measuring return. This goes back to what I was saying earlier. If you only measure on one criteria, then you're going to miss the bigger picture. Like if I go to the NFL Combine and I just say something stupid like the best players are the ones who run the 40-yard dash the fastest, I'm going to really I'm going to cost my team a lot of money, because I'm going to pick the worst players. Because all I'm picking is based on one criteria. So a lot of people, when they spend money, they'll say, oh, well, I'm going to go to the white business because it's a little bit cheaper, when they're not looking at all of the benefits that come with buying Black, right? To where, and this is a thing that I do advocate for. Actually, in my book, The 10 Commandments of Black Economic Power, I talk about the Black tax. Like, paying the Black tax is a positive ROI investment. Spending a little bit more for a Black product, if you have to, is beneficial, because then your dollar is going to multiply itself. If I spend with a Black-owned business and they spend with another Black person and another Black person, then that $1 has become $3. So that money has a value that goes far beyond just the dollar that I spend. Whereas if I spend that same dollar at Walmart, Target, or Kmart, that $1 will only be worth $1. That money is going to disappear as soon as I spend it, and they don't give their money back. They don't get rich. They don't become billionaires by giving all their money away to Black people. But Black people make them billionaires by us giving all of our money to them. All right. So let's keep going. To achieve the Powernomics vision, return on investment should be measured in its broadest sense, in personal economic as well as group socioeconomic terms. For every penny spent, the Black consumer should know what benefits the group receives in political, social, educational, and economic terms. Not only does our money go into the pockets of competitors, it comes back and is used against us. So you give them the weapon, and then they use the weapon to come back and get you. How about that? Ain't that something? Like, you literally empower your adversaries. That's deep. They think about this. Most Black people who are, especially public figures, who are scared of their own shadows, who who are afraid to do anything beneficial to black people, who are worried about being canceled and doing things that don't make any sense. It's because of money. It's because of economic power. Somebody controls that bag. So if you control that bag, if you control your source of economic power, then that's the key to your freedom. Freedom doesn't really, it doesn't really come that often. In a capitalist society, there isn't that much freedom available for people that don't have any economic power. It doesn't mean you have to be rich to be free. If you're poor and you want to be free, then what you got to do is you got to let go of your desire and need for money. That's another pathway to freedom. See, a lot of people think that the key to freedom is having all the money in the world, and that's not always true. Sometimes simply letting go of your need and desire for money is another pathway to freedom. If I don't want what you selling, if I don't want what you got, then I'm free of that. You can't control me with that. So part of when I didn't have, now I have a little bit of money, but when I didn't have any money, part of what allowed me to free myself was I trained myself to not want nothing that they got. Like, no, I don't need to be, no, I'm happy with my YouTube channel. I don't need to be on TV. No, I'm happy. I'm happy pouring into the Black Business School. I don't need to teach at your university. No, I don't want your awards. Your awards don't mean anything to me because awards are pretty much made up anyway. I get lots of awards, honestly, most of the time. Unless I respect the people giving the award, I usually don't even respond when they offer me an award. I know I'm good at what I do. I appreciate you acknowledging it, but it doesn't mean a whole lot to me. So give it to somebody else. Give it to somebody who needs validation. I don't need that. I know I'm good at what I do, right? So ultimately, the ability to really truly value what you have, if you value what you got going on, if you value what you are, where you at, who you with, and what you're doing, then you're not going to have time or energy to focus on anything else. It's like leaving a bad relationship. You ever see somebody that breaks up with somebody and they claim to be happy and independent and all that, but really they're constantly obsessed with what the other person's doing? Like they follow them on social media. They're hearing rumors that, gossiping about who they're dating and what they're doing. Sitting around praying that Jesus kills them and saying, well, that's what you get because you do people wrong. You ever see that, like when somebody has moved on, but they really haven't moved on and they can't, right? Well, really, when they can't move on like that, when you're obsessed with what somebody else is doing, that means that you kind of still love that person. You kind of admire them. There's a thin line between love and hate. So really, the day you know that you're truly over that person is when you're completely indifferent to what they're doing. You're not thinking about what they're doing because you're happy with what you got. You got a new man or a new woman, and you are truly feeling like you really had an upgrade. And so when you hear like, oh, but he got married, you're like, oh wow, that's great. And you can even go to the wedding and say, oh, well, good luck, good luck, girl. I don't know what's gonna be like to be married to him, but I wish you the best, or whatever, right? You can move on because you truly are happy with what you have. The only people that are not that are always obsessed with what somebody else is doing are people that are not happy with what they actually have. So I think that as a matter of self-esteem, that in a matter of self-worth and just understanding the value of what we have, I really encourage us to be obsessed with us. And this is to me, this is a higher frequency to operate on because people think that because I love Black people that I have this issue with white people. I ain't got time to hate white people. I ain't got time to be mad at white people. What's there for me to be jealous of? Like I got it all right here. I'm the original man. My wife is. I never met a white woman as pretty as my wife. I see all of our Black wealth in all of its forms. So just how much money we have is not an indicator of how powerful and how valuable this space is. Y'all are beautiful to me. I don't want to be anywhere else. I'm not mad. I think, for example, when I was at Syracuse University, I fought with them. We had a fight, before I left. And some of y'all saw that happen in real time 10 years ago. I'm not mad at Syracuse. I cheer for their football team. I have friends that are there. I think it's great. I feel bad for them, honestly, if that's all they have, because I don't really think I think that's an inferior place to be. It's like, yeah, I'm glad they kind of push me out because I kind of got a chance to really do what I really love anyway, right? And so ultimately, I think seeing the value in what you're doing, it's an intentional act because we're so used to growing up believing that we are that who we are is just not worth anything unless we get acknowledged by somebody else. Like we kind of feel like like, okay, I'm going to do this Black thing over here because white people won't pay attention to me, or white people won't give me what I want, or I'm going to go start a Black-owned business until white people notice it, and then they either buy it or they want to come hire me. what was it? Something I saw with that. Yeah, like even like you might have a coach that goes to teach to coach at an HBCU, and they're not really there because they think that being around black people is a superior experience. They're coaching at an HBCU so they can audition for a white university, right? Or and sometimes professors do that. I remember when I was interviewed, I went to Kentucky State University, and I spoke there. I gave a speech there, and I met this professor in the finance department who was an Italian guy. And I noticed that there were a lot of immigrants that teach at HBCUs. And literally, he had no value in being at an HBCU. He thought it was like teaching in a ghetto, like teaching just a bunch of worthless people. And I mean, he talked about them like they were worthless. And I was like, well, why is he here? And basically, I figured out that he was there because he couldn't get a better job. And as soon as a better job came along, he was out of there. He was going to bounce out of there, And so he and I were having different conversations. I wanted to be there. Like I was like, hey, maybe I can come teach here, and because I want to be around black people. Right. So ultimately, you have to see the value in what you have and what's around you. And I encourage you to keep training yourself to see that value. Like if I look at my kids, I see people that are smart. They can turn into something, that will benefit our family and our family business and our family legacy. So I see wealth even right there in the family. I don't have to leave the house to figure out where the wealth and the opportunities are. The opportunities are right there in that space because you've got smart people that have plenty of labor in their blood and the ability to get things done and all this other stuff. So focus on that. See the value in that. So let me keep reading here. I'm gonna read a little bit more, and then we'll be done for today. For every penny spent, the black consumer should know what benefits the group receives in political, social, educational, and economic terms. That's where you understand that money is power. Money isn't just money. Money is power. Not only does our money go into the pockets of competitors, it comes back and is used against us. Black consumers ought to value reciprocity and examine what they receive for the dollars they spend outside their own community. Black American spending patterns deprive them of their greatest potential for power, a flow of financial capital. The statistics we have used paint the picture. We spend approximately 95% of our income outside of our communities. Only 2% remains in black hands inside the black community. We typically take that 2% down to the local white bank and deposit it in a traditional savings account. It is then out of our control, and we generally cannot even leverage it into personal or business loans. Blacks often express bewilderment over how well whites live. They sometimes entertain out-of-town guests by taking them for rides through white communities to show off their expensive homes and a wide array of retail businesses. The question is frequently asked, how can so many whites afford to live so well? The answer is easy. Besides having hundreds of times more wealth than blacks, they also have the advantage of living off two incomes, 100% of their own money and 95% of black people's money. While whites enjoy the economic power of dual incomes, black Americans struggle to get by on the 2% of their disposable income, which is financially impossible to do without some form of government subsidy. So what Dr. Anderson is saying right there is that you end up depending on the government because you can't depend on yourselves, because you give everything that would sustain you away to other people. That is where we're trained. That is the psychological trap. It's all psychological. It starts with who's educating you, who's giving you your values, who's telling you what your culture should be. And so if I'm growing up in a typical black household and I'm watching mainstream television and going to a public school, I'm being trained to play my position, which is to be a servant of other people. That's it. That's what you're being trained to do. So in order for you to break out of that, you have to literally detach from a lot of these systems or override a lot of that programming, because if you don't, then your kids will be sold into slavery. We sell our kids into slavery every day. It's something that we have to be thoughtful about, and I encourage you to go ahead and implement that. At the very least, here's one little tip I would throw out there. Every black child in America should be taught how to start their own business so they can walk away from any job that they're on and do better, do just as well on their business as they do on their job. Every black child should be taught how to start a business. It doesn't take long. It would take a few weeks. It doesn't take as much effort as going to football practice and basketball practice and cheerleading camp. We spend money on those things. We should spend money on economic camp, on the economic training camp to get them ready for the game of economic warfare. They will lose that game if they are not trained. If they are not prepared, they're going to lose that game. They're going to have to sell themselves into slavery, because you sell yourself into slavery when you don't have the ability to take care of yourself. When you don't have the ability to take care of yourself or defend yourself, You have to become a slave to those who have power around you. So if you're going into a situation where there are threats all around you, there are the things the situations you have to survive. You have to be prepared. And the question is, are we preparing our kids? You prepare your kids in a couple of ways. One, you give them the training. That's important. Two, you give them resources to execute the training. Three, you give them the discipline and the courage in terms of knowing who they are, so that when they apply that discipline and that training and those resources, they're not really worried about what everybody else is doing. They're going to do what they need to do. So that kid who's got $250,000 in the bank because you were doing things like the $5 a day investing program, which you can find, by the way, you can get the ebook. It's totally free at boycewatkins.com. So that you've been doing the $5 a day plan since they were a kid. They have $250,000 in wealth that they can use to make financial moves. And they have the knowledge. They understand stocks. They understand real estate. They understand how to start a business. Boom. They don't just have the money. They know what to do with the money. See, a lot of people, when they get money, they throw it away. It's like a football game. If I don't know how to run to the end zone, you give me the ball, I'm going to just throw it back to the defense. I'm going to run in the wrong direction. I'm going to run to the sideline like an idiot because I don't know where to go. So some people get the bag, they get the ball or the bag, whichever you want to call it. And when they get the bag and the ball, they run the wrong way because nobody ever taught them which way to run when you get that opportunity. So ultimately, a lot of times, that word poor stands for passing over opportunities repeatedly. I see poor behavior all the time. Every time you hear about an entertainer who had $50 million and went broke, that's a poor man. Every time you hear about an athlete who had a $100 million contract and went broke, that's a poor man. Every time you and I, regular jobs, you're making $50,000 a year or whatever, and you can look back and can't even remember what you did with any of the money that you made. Well, that's poor behavior. It doesn't mean I'm not beating you up about it. I'm not going to. You should beat yourself up about it. You should say, okay, I got to do something a little bit different. I got to plant some kind of seed. So ultimately, when you talk about these kids, they are $1 trillion asset, but that $1 trillion asset must be developed. It has to be trained like a great athlete. If I got a baby who's going to be the next LeBron James, I got to make sure he's eating right. I got to take him to the court. I got to teach him basketball strategies, make sure he can get the most out of his potential. So with your kids, you've got kids who are going to be the LeBron James of engineering. Some of your kids are talented, could be great attorneys or great entrepreneurs or great salespeople. You got to put them in a space where that's going to be nurtured and developed. And again, given those three things, the model that we use is what we call the KID model. You will not read this in any textbook because I put this together myself specifically for Black folks. It stands for knowledge, investment, and discipline. You must give them the financial knowledge. It's very basic. Real estate, stocks, entrepreneurship. If a kid knows those three things, then they're always going to know how to make a move. They're going to know where the money's at. Investment means you're giving them capital. So now you've taught them how to shoot a gun. The capital is the gun. The capital is the gun and the bullets. So knowing how to shoot a gun ain't as good as actually having a gun. But if I have a gun and don't know how to shoot it, I'm going to shoot myself in the face, or I'm going to shoot my mama in the toe or something like that, right? So I got to have two things. I got to have the gun and I got to know how to shoot it. So knowledge is knowing how to shoot the gun. The investment is actually the gun itself. And then discipline. Discipline means knowing when to shoot, what target to aim for, how to fight a battle, how to design a battle plan and stick with it. Right. So that discipline piece is really important because I see a lot of people that have the investment and they have the knowledge, but they don't apply it in the right way. It's almost like that person who's the gym coach who's overweight, right? Who knows everything you're supposed to eat, the workout you're supposed to do, but they don't have the discipline to actually do the workout because their value system is all jacked up. So ultimately, those values and that culture and making smart decisions, little things like that are critically important for kids because when they get to that point where they got a bag full of money and they know what to do with that money, they have the discipline to connect what they should do with what they actually do. Right? A lot of us know what we should do, but we don't do it. Like I know, for example, that I'm not supposed to eat certain fatty fried food or whatever. Sometimes I have discipline and I'm eating things like this banana, but then sometimes I might scarf down a cheeseburger, and that's not the most disciplined version of myself. Right. So even when you know what to do. So remember, it's not just a knowledge gap. We talk about wealth as a knowledge gap. Like people just don't know what to do. A lot of people know what to do. Dr. Boyce Watkins and people like me have been on the internet since forever. You can find 20,000 videos I've done on wealth and economics right there on your phone. But so it's not a lack of availability of knowledge. It is culture. It's values. You know, if you are sitting there broke and mad that you don't have any money, but every time you open up your phone, you're watching videos where some rapper is talking about who he shot yesterday and how many babies mamas he's got, then you're basically violating that third rule of discipline. You know, you're not actively seeking out the things that are going to improve your life, so your life is going to be pretty bad, right? So train your kids on that. I think that will give them a head start in the world. If you want to take a look at our Black Business School for Children, by the way, in the Black Business School, feel free to go to blackmillionairesoftomorrow.com. Also, our financial flashcards and all that stuff. You go to my website, boycewatkins.com. You can find all that stuff up there. So feel free to go take a look at that. And also, my new book is up there. So any tools that we have that can help you achieve that goal, feel free to take a look. And also, somebody asked if I'm going to Dallas on the tour. Yeah, I think the cities that I'm going to tour are, and you're welcome to fly in. I guarantee you it'll be worth it. So I'll try to tell you guys in advance in case you want to plan a trip to come out to one of the cities. I know we're going to LA and Philly and Dallas and Chicago and Houston and New York and like Brooklyn, I think, though, like the borough, like not the New York City. So those are 6 cities that I know for sure. No, Tony, sorry, not Seattle. We have to go to places where we know we have a reasonably strong possibility of having the turnout level that we need in order to make it profitable. Planning tours, just in case you guys want to know, it's a lot of work, and there's a whole team. It's very expensive, and you know you got to raise the money and invest it and all that stuff, which I don't mind doing. But we really kind of need to know that on the back end that the investment is going to work. You know, because our margin of error is a little bit thinner in terms of where we allocate and deploy our capital. Okay, but yeah, we are going to do those things. And so if you want to join us, I'm not just going to be there to give a speech and sign books, which I'll do that too, but I'm also going to do a deep dive training on the book. Right, so all 10 of the commandments, we will go through each one. I would talk about how to implement it, exactly what it means, kind of give you the whole color commentary in terms of breaking it all down for you so you can really understand it. So if you're interested in being a part of that, I will keep you guys posted. And I hope you guys have a good night. So thank you all for hanging out. We'll be back next week with the Dr. Boyce Book Club. And don't forget also, if you haven't gotten Dr. Claude Anderson's book, Powernomics, you can go to powernomics.com. So have a good night, everybody. I'll see you guys next week. Take care now. Bye-bye.